Please hit that like button if you believe in the power of second chances, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring true stories. The icy sweat trickled down Marcus Thorne's spine, a stark contrast to the luxurious warmth of his penthouse office. 30 minutes. That's all he had left to seal a $500 million deal with a formidable French investment group. His hands trembled as he slammed down the phone. Paul Devereaux, his star translator, the best in New York City, was in critical condition after a terrible accident. Everything seemed lost, didn't it? But sometimes, salvation whispers from the most unexpected corners. Her name was Elena Vance, and what she did that day irrevocably altered everything. This is Elena Vance's story. Marcus Thorne, 52, felt his hands shake as he hung up. He had built an empire from the ground up, navigated countless crises and betrayals, yet he'd never known the kind of raw panic seizing him now, high in his 40th floor office, overlooking the bustling heart of Manhattan. The news was a career ender. Paul Devereaux, his indispensable French translator, was gravely injured. The French investors were due in 27 minutes. "Mr. Thorne," Sarah, his secretary's voice crackled nervously through the intercom. "The reports are ready, but the translator—" Marcus rose from his imported leather chair, pacing. Through the window, the city's chaotic energy usually offered a strange comfort. But today, even that couldn't distract him from the impending disaster. Sarah entered, pale, clutching a stack of papers that felt like a death sentence. "Sir, I called every French translator in the city. All booked, or can't make it in time. The earliest I could get someone is 4 p.m. Marcus stared at her. "Sarah, the French are here in 20 minutes. This meeting is worth $500 million. If we lose this contract, we'll have to lay off half the company." It was no exaggeration. He'd staked everything on this international expansion with the French group, Dubois et Associés. It had been his dream for 15 years. Marcus ran a hand through his hair. He spoke English and Spanish, but French was a complete mystery. "Google Translate? Anything?" he asked. Desperate. Sarah shook her head. "Sir." They'd know instantly. Besides, we're talking complex contracts, technical terms, legal nuances. This isn't a restaurant conversation. She was right. The phone rang. It was Jean-Claude Dubois, the French patriarch, speaking in elegant French that Marcus couldn't decipher. "Oui, très bien, merci." That's all Marcus managed before hanging up, praying he'd said something appropriate. "Sarah, they'll be here in 15 minutes. 15! Marcus shouted, his voice cracking for the first time. "If we can't communicate, they'll think we're amateurs. They'll cancel everything." Outside, employees had stopped working, shocked to see their usually unflappable boss lose his composure. David, the finance director, approached the door. "Marcus, can I help?" His French was worse than Marcus's. "David, do you know anyone who speaks French? Anyone at all?" David hesitated. "My daughter has a teacher, but she's in class and knows nothing about business." He suggested speaking English, but Marcus immediately dismissed it. "Are you crazy? They're traditional investors. They'll think we're not serious. They value protocol, education, sophistication." Emily, the marketing director, appeared at the door. "What if we explain the medical emergency?" Marcus slumped into his chair. "Emily, they flew all the way from Paris just for this. If we can't even communicate, they'll think we're small-time operation. The clock ticked to 3 o'clock. In 10 minutes, the Dubois family would be in the boardroom, expecting a presentation Marcus couldn't deliver. Sarah tried one last idea. "Sir, I'll call the French Alliance." As she frantically dialed, Marcus saw a black Mercedes pull up outside. 3 elegantly dressed men, clearly European, stepped out. Marcus's stomach churned. "Sarah, they're here. They're here, and we have no translator." It was then that Elena Vance passed through the hallway, pushing her cleaning cart. She'd worked in the building for 2 years, always invisible, silent. A 43-year-old woman with her hair in a simple ponytail, dressed in the cleaning company's blue uniform. Elena had heard the commotion from Mr. Thorne's office, but she was used to shouting executives. Today, however, the tone was different. She'd never heard him so desperate, so human. Elena stopped cleaning when she heard the word French repeated several times. Her hand tightened on the mop. France. Paris. A life she'd left behind 4 years ago. One she tried to forget every day. "There's no one who speaks French in this damn company!" Marcus roared. Elena walked towards the door, fighting her instincts to remain invisible. But the man's desperation touched something deep within her. Perhaps it reminded her of her own moments of despair. "Excuse me." Elena gently knocked on the open door. All heads turned. "Elena, this isn't the time for cleaning," Sarah said automatically. Elena took a deep breath and stepped into the room. "Please forgive the interruption, but I heard you talking about French?" Marcus looked at her impatiently. "Elena, we're in the middle of a crisis. The French are coming up now." "I know, sir. That's why I came." Elena paused, knowing her next words would change everything. "I speak fluent French." The silence was deafening. Marcus blinked. Sarah's mouth opened, but no sound came out. David and Emily exchanged incredulous glances. "You what?" Marcus finally managed to stammer. "I speak fluent French, sir. I lived in Paris for 12 years." Elena kept her voice steady. Marcus studied her as if seeing her for the first time. For 2 years, Elena Vance had been part of the office landscape. Now, suddenly, she was offering to save him from the biggest crisis of his life. "Are you sure?" Marcus asked, still disbelieving. "Absolutely. I worked in Paris. I know French culture. Can I help?" Elena's heart pounded. She was offering to return to a world she had sworn never to be a part of again. From the hallway came the murmur of French voices. The investors had arrived. Marcus looked at Elena, at his team, at the clock. He had no choice. It was trust a cleaner or lose $500 million. "Sarah, take Elena to the executive washroom. Get her some appropriate clothes. Fast. Emily, prepare a folder with our materials. David, greet the French and buy us some time." Marcus took a deep breath. "Elena, I hope you know what you're doing." Elena nodded, trembling internally. It wasn't just translating. It was returning to who she once was, touching wounds that still bled, facing a past that had destroyed her. As Sarah practically dragged her away to get ready, Elena heard the French being greeted. Their voices were polite, refined, exactly as she remembered from the executives she used to work with. And for the first time in 4 years, Elena Vance prepared to re-enter the corporate world. Not as the CEO of a multinational she once was, but as the impromptu translator who could save or ruin Marcus Thorne's company. The fate of millions of dollars rested in the hands of a cleaner who held secrets no one could imagine. Elena knew that after this meeting, nothing would be the same. She couldn't be invisible. And perhaps, for the first time in 4 years, she didn't want to hide. What do you think is going through Marcus's mind at this moment? Share your predictions in the comments below. Sarah practically dragged Elena down the hallway towards the executive washroom. Elena had never been to this part of the building. It was a world of luxury and modernity. "Elena, are you absolutely sure you speak French? If this goes wrong, Mr. Thorne will fire us on the spot." Elena looked at herself in the mirror. A 43-year-old woman, tired, with wrinkles that hadn't existed 4 years ago. The cleaning uniform made her look exactly what she had become, invisible, expendable. "I'm sure, Sarah. I worked at a French multinational for 8 years. I was the chief operating officer. The words slipped out before Elena could regret them. Sarah stopped dead, eyes wide. You were what? It's a long story. Right now we need to focus on the meeting. Elena avoided the details. Sarah pulled out a navy blue blazer, a white blouse, and a formal skirt. Put this on quickly. They must be in the boardroom already. Elena changed. It had been 4 years since she'd worn formal clothes, since she'd participated in a corporate meeting, since she'd spoken professional French. It was like riding a bicycle again after a severe accident. Elena, I need to know the truth. Do you really understand business? Because they're going to talk about contracts, investments, technical terms that even I can't pronounce. Sarah was visibly nervous. Elena adjusted the blazer and looked at herself in the mirror. The transformation was striking. Suddenly, she looked like a real executive. Sarah, for 8 years, I closed deals worth tens of millions of euros. I negotiated with the largest corporate groups in France. I know exactly what I'm doing. Elena took a deep breath, feeling something inside her awaken. But I need 5 minutes alone before the meeting to mentally prepare. We don't have 5 minutes. The French are waiting and Marcus is having a nervous breakdown. Sarah, if you want me to do this right, to save this company from the biggest fiasco in history, I need those 5 minutes. Trust me. Sarah hesitated. Something different was in Elena now. 5 minutes, no more than that, Sarah said, and rushed out. Elena sat on the leather armchair and closed her eyes. She needed to travel back in time. She needed to find Ana Cristina Dumont, the woman who lived in an elegant apartment in Polanco, Mexico City, but adapted as her original name was Ana Silva, spoke French every day, and negotiated with Europe's largest business groups as if it were the most natural thing in the world. She remembered the meetings at Dubois et Associés' headquarters in Paris. She knew that family well. Conservative, traditional, valuing protocol and elegance above all else. Jean-Claude was especially strict with business etiquette. Any slip-up, and the meeting would be lost. Elena opened her eyes and stood up. It was time to return to who she truly was. Outside, Marcus paced nervously. David tried to entertain the French with coffee. Marcus, are you sure about this? Emily whispered to Sarah. Betting everything on a cleaner? Marcus was sweating. Sarah approached him, a look of surprise and nervousness on her face. Marcus, I need to tell you something. Elena said she was a COO for a French multinational for 8 years. Marcus stopped dead. What? How so? She said she closed deals worth tens of millions of euros. Marcus, maybe she really knows what she's doing. Maybe she's not just a cleaner. Before Marcus could process the information, Elena appeared in the hallway. The transformation was so dramatic that no one recognized her. The blazer fit her perfectly. Her posture was erect, confident. She didn't walk apologetically for existing, but like someone who knew exactly where she was going. Mr. Thorne, Elena said, and even her voice sounded different, firmer, professional, with an authority that didn't fit their image of her. I'm ready. Marcus studied her. There was something in her presence he hadn't noticed before, a natural confidence, an elegance that isn't learned. Elena, before we go in, I need to know something. Can you really do this? This meeting is worth the future of the company. If it goes wrong, Elena looked him directly in the eyes, without blinking. Mr. Thorne, for 8 years, I represented one of the largest French companies in the world in Latin America. I closed alliances that changed entire markets. I know exactly how to deal with French investors. Marcus's jaw dropped. What company? Continental Tires. As regional director for all of Latin America, I reported directly to the board in Hanover. Elena paused, seeing the shock on their faces. But that's the past. Today, I'm here to help you. Emily whispered to Sarah. How does an ex-director of Continental Tires become a cleaner? It made no sense. Elena heard, but didn't respond. It wasn't time for explanations. Can we go? Traditional French people like the Dubois family don't like to wait. Marcus nodded, still processing the revelation. They walked towards the meeting room, and Elena felt the team's curious glances. She knew that after this meeting, everything would change forever. There was no turning back. When they opened the door, Elena saw 3 elegantly dressed men speaking French. Jean-Claude Dubois, 70, with completely white hair, still had that aristocratic posture she remembered. Philippe Dubois, in his 40s, seemed impatient. And a third man Elena didn't recognize. Monsieur, excusez notre retard, Elena said in perfect French, with an accent so natural she sounded Parisian-born. The 3 Frenchmen turned. Jean-Claude raised his eyebrows, surprised by her impeccable fluency. Philippe stopped looking at his watch. The third man studied her with renewed interest. It was like seeing a light switch turn on. Elena no longer spoke like a cleaner who knew a few French words. She spoke like someone who had lived, worked, and breathed that culture for years. Marcus stood beside Elena, completely lost in the conversation, but impressed by her naturalness. It was as if she had been reborn before his eyes. Jean-Claude approached and shook her hand with the respect given to an equal. The conversation continued in French for a few minutes, and Marcus realized it wasn't just a basic translation. Elena was conducting a sophisticated social conversation, building rapport, doing exactly what an experienced international negotiator would do. What are they talking about? Marcus whispered to Elena. Social topics. He's complimenting the city view, the office, asking about my background. It's standard protocol. They're evaluating me to decide if you are serious enough to do business. Elena responded in a low voice, without losing her professional smile. Philippe said something in French that indicated impatience. Mr. Philippe wants to get straight to the meeting. He has commitments in Paris early tomorrow morning, Elena translated. Marcus straightened up. Perfect, let's begin. Then Elena positioned herself strategically between Marcus and the French, and for the first time in 4 years, she felt completely at home. This was her natural element, her original habitat. It wasn't just about the language. It was about understanding cultures, facilitating business, building bridges between different worlds. Marcus began his presentation in English, pausing after each sentence for Elena to translate. But he quickly realized that Elena wasn't just translating word for word. She was enhancing, refining, making everything more elegant and persuasive, as if she were translating not just the language, but the intention behind the words. When Marcus mentioned revenue figures, Elena didn't just translate. She contextualized, explained the Mexican market, and compared it to French companies they knew. When he spoke of expansion plans, she added details about regulations that demonstrated deep knowledge. Jean-Claude asked a complex question about Mexican taxes, and Elena not only translated for Marcus, but responded directly, demonstrating a technical understanding that left the Frenchman visibly impressed. Elena, Marcus whispered during a pause, while the French spoke among themselves. You're not just translating, you're selling better than I am. Elena smiled with a confidence no one on the Mexican team had seen before. This is how you do business with the French, Mr. Thorne. They need to feel that you fully understand their world. Literal translation isn't enough. The meeting continued, and Marcus realized he was witnessing something extraordinary. Elena was not just a competent translator or a disguised ex-executive. She was an innate negotiator, a perfect cultural bridge, a woman who understood both the Mexican and French sides better than any consultant he had ever hired. And the French were clearly impressed. Philippe stopped looking at his watch. Jean-Claude took notes with genuine interest. The third man whispered positive comments that Elena translated with strategic modesty. When they took their first break, Jean-Claude approached Elena and said something that made her blush slightly. "What did he say?" Marcus asked, curious. Elena hesitated. "He said he rarely finds consultants with such business sophistication outside of Paris, and wants to know where you discovered me." Marcus looked at Elena with a completely new expression. For 2 years, she had been practically invisible to him. Now, in one morning, she had transformed into the most valuable person in his company. "Elena, when this meeting is over, we'll have a very long conversation about who you really are." Elena nodded, knowing there was no longer any way to hide the past. The invisible cleaner had disappeared forever. Lena Christina Dumont was back in the world that was once hers, and this time she was determined not to let anyone destroy her again. Can you imagine the pressure Elena felt, stepping back into a world that had once broken her? What would you do if your entire future hinged on an impossible deadline? Tell us in the comments. Upon returning to the meeting room after the break, something fundamental had changed. The French no longer saw Elena as a simple translator. There was a respect in their eyes that Marcus had never seen directed at any of his employees. Jean-Claude had even pulled a chair for her to sit at the table, instead of standing behind Marcus. "Monsieur Thorne," Jean-Claude said in slow, measured English, "your consultant is very, how do you say, impressive." Elena automatically translated. "Mr. Jean-Claude said I am impressive." She paused strategically. "But I think he is referring to the company's presentation in general, Mr. Thorne." Marcus realized that Elena was deflecting the compliment to him, protecting his ego. It was a clever and diplomatic move that further demonstrated her expertise in complex negotiations. Philippe opened a document folder and began speaking quickly in French, gesticulating. It was something important, technical, full of legal terms. Marcus awaited the translation, but was surprised when Elena responded, directly in French, asking specific questions and taking detailed notes. "Elena, what's happening? Please, keep me informed," Marcus whispered, feeling excluded from his own meeting. "Excuse me, sir. Philippe is presenting the investment structure they propose for the alliance. It's quite complex. It involves holdings in 3 different countries for tax optimization." Elena paused, organizing the information in her head with the precision of someone who had seen similar structures hundreds of times. "But there are some problematic points. The configuration they propose can create serious legal complications in Mexico." Marcus blinked. "How do you know that?" "Because I already structured similar investments when I worked in France. This specific configuration had problems with Mexico's tax administration service in 2018. I know at least 3 companies that had huge headaches with the tax authorities for using exactly that structure." Elena turned to Philippe and said something in French that made him stop immediately and consult his papers. Philippe responded with what was clearly a worried question. Elena nodded and continued explaining in French. Marcus watched the younger Frenchman become more and more interested, taking frantic notes. "Elena, for God's sake, tell me what's going on. I'm the one closing this contract." Marcus was beginning to feel like a spectator. Elena turned to him with an apologetic but professionally determined expression. "Mr. Thorne, I've identified 3 serious problems in the structure they proposed. If we sign as is, you could face serious problems with Mexican and European tax authorities. Fines that could amount to millions." She showed him the papers covered with annotations. "I suggested some modifications that protect the interests of both parties and are completely legal in both jurisdictions." Jean-Claude said something in French that made Philippe smile, clearly impressed. "What was that now?" Marcus asked, feeling completely lost. "Mr. Jean-Claude said he rarely finds Mexican consultants with such deep knowledge of European regulations, and that he's impressed with the level of preparation of your team." Elena hesitated. "He also suggested that you permanently include me in the team that will manage this alliance in the coming years. Marcus felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. In 3 hours, his cleaner had transformed into the international consultant he never knew he needed, and the French, known for being extremely demanding, were clearly fascinated with her. "Mr. Thorne," Elena continued in a low voice, "I can suggest a strategic pause. I need to explain the technical implications of what they're proposing before we continue. There are important decisions that need to be made." Marcus nodded, still trying to process how an employee he paid minimum wage understood more about international business than his own MBA executives. "Monsieur, can we take a short break?" Elena said to the French, who politely agreed. They left the meeting room, and Marcus practically dragged Elena to his office, closing the door with more force than necessary. Sarah, David, and Emily followed, with expressions of extreme curiosity and shock. "Elena, who on earth are you really?" Marcus exploded as soon as the door closed. Elena sat in the chair in front of Marcus's desk, maintaining her upright posture. But for the first time since she put on the blazer, he saw genuine vulnerability in her eyes, as if she were about to open a wound that had never fully healed. "My full name is Elena Christina Dumont. For 12 years, I lived in France, where I built a career I thought would last forever." She paused, breathing deeply. 8 of those years I worked for Continental Tires as Chief Operating Officer for all of Latin America. Before that, I did an MBA at HEC Paris and worked for 2 other French multinationals. The silence in the room was absolute. Sarah had stopped breathing. David's mouth was open. Emily held the papers as if they were the only solid thing in a world that had just been turned upside down. "How did you go from director at Continental Tires to a cleaner here?" Marcus asked, his voice softer now, realizing there was a painful story behind that impossible transformation. Elena looked at her own hands, and for the first time, Marcus saw tears form in her eyes. 4 years ago, my husband, Antoine, was arrested in France for tax evasion and money laundering. He was a partner in a consulting firm that diverted client funds for years. She paused, the pain visible on her face. "I knew nothing. I was focused on my work, but because I was married to him, and we had a joint bank account, I was also investigated." "My God," Sarah whispered. "I was not charged because they could prove my complete innocence, but the scandal destroyed my reputation overnight. The French press is unforgiving, and my name became synonymous with suspicion." Elena wiped a tear. "No French company wanted to hire me. We lost everything. House, cars, investments, friends. Antoine is still in prison today. He has 2 more years to serve." Marcus sat down heavily. "And why didn't you look for a job in your field here in Mexico?" Marcus asked. "I tried for months. I sent resumes to all the multinationals. I offered my services as a consultant. I tried to explain my situation." Elena took a deep breath, recomposing herself with her usual professionalism. "But when companies searched my name online, they found all the news about the scandal. Even though my innocence was proven, no one wanted to take the risk of hiring someone associated with tax fraud." David shook his head, moved by the injustice. "Elena, that's absurd. You're visibly competent." "Life doesn't care about competence when you need to eat and pay rent, David." Elena straightened up, regaining her composure. "Leo, my son, was 15 when we returned. He needed stability, a place to live, food on the table. The cleaning job was what I got fastest, and the company offered health insurance." Emily approached. "Elena, what exactly is wrong with the French proposal? You talked about serious problems." Elena took the meeting papers and instantly returned to professional mode. "They are proposing an investment structure that works perfectly within French law. But here in Mexico, it can be interpreted as aggressive tax elusion by the SAT." She pointed to specific points in the documents. "If the SAT decides to audit, They can face fines of up to 300% of the invested value, in addition to criminal proceedings for evasion. Marcus leaned forward, finally understanding the gravity. And do you know how to solve this without losing the investment? I know exactly how to solve it. I need to modify 3 specific clauses in the contracts and include 2 legal safeguards that make everything transparent. Elena showed her annotations. This makes the investment fully legal and auditable in both countries, without reducing legitimate tax benefits. In fact, it can even increase legal security for both parties. Sarah looked at the papers over Marcus's shoulder. How can you be so sure this will work? Because I structured practically identical investments for Renault when they expanded operations in Mexico and Argentina. Same fiscal logic adapted for different national regulations. Elena paused, showing a confidence that came from years of experience. And I still maintain informal contact with some ex-colleagues who work in the main international tax consultancies. I know exactly which structures are being questioned by national tax authorities and which are considered safe. Marcus studied her. Elena, you are not just a former executive in disgrace. You are an international specialist in European investments in the Latin American market, one of the best I have seen. Marcus, that was 4 years ago, a long time in the corporate world. No, Elena, Marcus corrected, but there was a spark in his eyes that hadn't existed for years. No, Elena, knowledge like yours isn't lost. You just proved it by saving a $500 million contract that I was about to sign and that could have destroyed me. Marcus stood up, making a decision that would change everything. When we go back into that room, I want you to negotiate directly with me, not as a translator, but as a senior consultant for the company. Elena hesitated, the old fear returning. Marcus, I can't do this. Officially, I'm your cleaning employee. If the French discover the truth, Elena, the French already realized you're not an ordinary translator. Jean-Claude has 40 years of experience in international business. He knows how to recognize world-class competence when he sees it, regardless of the job title on paper. Marcus walked to the window. And honestly, after what I witnessed today, I think you understand more about this specific business than I do. A soft knock on the door interrupted the conversation. It was the receptionist. Mr. Thorne, the French are asking if they can continue. They said they have some specific technical questions they would like to discuss with the Mexican consultant. Marcus and Elena exchanged meaningful glances. They called you a consultant, not a translator, Marcus observed. Because you introduced me as a translator, but I acted as an international consultant. For traditional French people like the Dubois, technical competence speaks louder than formal titles. They recognized the expertise when they saw it. So let's give them exactly what they want. Marcus made the final decision. Elena, finish this meeting as the international consultant you truly are. Close this deal with me as a partner, not an employee. Elena looked at him with a mixture of hope and terror. Hope of returning to be who she was born to be. Terror that everything could fall apart again. Marcus, after today there's no turning back. You understand that, right? Marcus smiled for the first time since the crisis began. Elena, after what you did today, I don't want there to be any turning back. I want you to be exactly who you always were, the best international negotiator I've ever met. When they returned to the meeting room, Elena no longer tried to hide. She sat at the table as an equal, opened her own document folder, and began negotiating the largest contract in Marcus's company's history, with the elegance and competence that had made her a legend in French multinationals. And for the first time in 4 years, Elena Christina Dumont was exactly who she was born to be. A brilliant executive, closing multi-million-dollar deals with the natural ease of someone who should never have stopped. 3 hours later, when the French finally rose from the table, Marcus knew he had witnessed something historic. Not only had they closed the original $500 million contract, but Elena had structured a much broader alliance that would include 2 more projects in the next 18 months. The total value reached $800 million. Jean-Claude approached Elena and shook her hand with the profound respect that only the French give to someone who truly impresses them. He handed her his personal card. After the French left, promising to return the following week with the final documentation, Marcus remained alone with Elena in the room. The silence was charged with tension, with accomplishment, and with an irreversible change. "Elena," Marcus finally said, loosening his tie for the first time that day, "in 3 hours, you just closed the biggest deal in my company's history. You not only saved a contract that could have ruined me, but you transformed it into something much bigger than I ever dreamed." He paused, searching for the right words. "And you did it using knowledge and experience that I didn't even know existed meters away from me for 2 years." Elena put the documents away in the folder, avoiding looking at him. Now that the negotiation adrenaline had passed, the reality of what had happened was setting in. She was no longer the invisible cleaner. There was no turning back. "I did what needed to be done, Marcus, nothing more. Stop calling me Mr. Thorne. After what happened today, I think we can be Marcus and Elena." He sat down heavily. "Elena, I need to ask you a direct question, and I want a completely honest answer." Elena finally looked at him, preparing herself. "Why did you never tell me who you really were? Why did you agree to work as a cleaner when you are clearly one of the most brilliant business minds I have ever met?" Elena sighed deeply, as if she had carried that weight for years. "Marcus, when you're desperate, when you need to put food on your son's table and pay the rent at the end of the month, pride is a luxury you cannot afford." She paused, looking out the window at the city that had welcomed her when she had nothing. "And honestly, after losing everything in France, seeing my name associated with scandals in every newspaper, I had no confidence in my professional ability. I started to believe that perhaps I wasn't as good as I thought. And today, how do you feel after impressing some of Europe's most sophisticated investors?" Elena smiled, a true smile, full of an emotion she hadn't felt in years. "Today, I felt like myself for the first time in 4 years, as if I had woken up from a very long nightmare." Marcus stood up and walked to the window. "Elena, I have a proposal to make. In fact, I have several proposals." Elena waited in silence, her heart beating faster. "First option. You accept one of the offers that will surely come from the French. You become an independent international consultant. You earn a lot of money. You completely rebuild your career in the European market." Marcus turned to her. "Second option. You become my partner at Thorne Holdings. We lead this international expansion together, and all those that follow." Elena blinked. Sure, she might had misheard. "Partner? Elena, after what I witnessed today, I am absolutely certain that you know international markets infinitely better than I do. You have contacts, experience, credibility, and clearly you have a talent for transforming a regional Mexican company into an international player." Marcus approached the desk. "I'm offering a 25% partnership in the company, plus a special share in the profits of all international contracts you bring in." Elena's jaw literally dropped. For 4 years, she had cleaned offices and dreamed of a second chance. Now, suddenly, she was being offered a partnership in a company that had just closed the biggest contract in its history. "Marcus, I can't accept something like this. It's too generous. You barely know me." "Elena, today you saved my company from a contract that could have resulted in criminal proceedings and millions in fines. Then you transformed a $500 million deal into an $800 million alliance. If that doesn't deserve a partnership, I don't know what does." Marcus smiled genuinely. "Besides, I have a strong feeling that with you as a partner, those 800 million from the French are just the beginning of something much bigger." Elena stood up and walked to the window, looking at the city where she had started her life from scratch 4 years earlier. A city that had welcomed her as a refugee and now offered her a second chance she never imagined possible. For a few minutes, she remained silent, processing the magnitude of the proposal. Partnership meant financial security for her and Leo, professional recognition. It meant she could finally use all her knowledge and experience without hiding. "Marcus, can I make a counter-proposal?" "Of course. I accept the partnership, but with 3 non-negotiable conditions." Elena turned to him with a determination Marcus was learning to recognize. "First, I want all cleaning and general services employees in this company to have their salaries reviewed and increased by at least 30%. If I can go from cleaner to partner, others also deserve opportunities and recognition." Marcus nodded immediately, impressed by her generosity and social conscience. "Agreed completely. And the second condition? I want to establish a scholarship program for employees' children. Education changes lives, and I want the company to be part of that transformation." Elena paused. "Leo got a scholarship to the City University of New York, but I know how many families here struggle to provide quality education for their children." "Perfect. We'll create the Elena Dumont Scholarship Program. And the third condition?" Elena smiled mischievously. "I want a week to train my replacement in cleaning. I can't leave the job half-finished." Marcus laughed, genuinely amused and moved by her humility. "Elena, you just closed an $800 million deal, and you're worried about training a cleaner." "Marcus, one thing I learned in life is that all honest work has dignity, and every transition must be done with responsibility and respect." Elena extended her hand. "So, do we have a deal?" Marcus shook her hand, knowing that he was sealing not only a business alliance, but a friendship that would change both their lives forever. "We have a deal. And Elena, welcome back to the world where you always belonged." Outside the meeting room, Sarah, David, and Emily waited anxiously. When Marcus and Elena came out, both smiling, they knew something extraordinary had happened. "Team," Marcus announced to the gathered staff, "I want to officially introduce Elena Christina Dumont, our new partner and director of international business for Thorn Holdings." The silence was broken by Sarah, who began to applaud. In seconds, the entire office was applauding. The news spread like wildfire. Elena was excited but also scared by the attention. For 4 years, she had hidden. Now, suddenly, she was the center of attention. "Elena, this is incredible," Emily approached. "You deserve every recognition." "I always knew there was something special about you," David added. "The way you observed meetings, how you understood conversations, now it all makes sense." Sarah, with tears in her eyes, said, "Elena, I'm so happy for you. You're going to revolutionize this company." That afternoon, Elena moved into an office on the 38th floor with panoramic city views. Sitting at her new desk, reviewing documents for other international projects that were already arriving, she allowed herself to feel something she hadn't felt in 4 years. Genuine hope for the future. Her phone rang. It was Leo, calling from university. "Mom, you're not going to believe what I'm hearing here at the faculty. Everyone's talking about a story about a cleaner who became a company partner after closing a multi-million-dollar contract. They say it's too inspiring to be true." Elena laughed, realizing the story was already spreading. "Son, there are things in life that are so extraordinary they seem impossible, but sometimes they really happen. Mom, that story is about you, right?" Elena looked out the window of her new office. "Yes, Leo, it's about us. About starting over, about never giving up, even when all seems lost." When she hung up the phone, Elena allowed herself to cry for the first time in 4 years. They weren't tears of sadness, but of relief, gratitude, of a woman who had found her way back home. Elena Christina Dumont was no longer the invisible cleaner. She was a partner at Thorn Holdings, one of the country's most respected and international negotiators, and a woman who had proven that second chances really do exist. Sometimes they come when you least expect them, disguised as a crisis. And sometimes, to find them, you need the courage to show who you really are. Elena had found that courage, and now, finally, she was ready to build the future she always deserved. If you found this story inspiring, please like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear it. 6 months after the meeting that changed everything, Elena was in her 38th floor office, reviewing contracts for 3 new international projects. The glass table was covered with documents in Spanish, English, and French, proof of how Thorn Holdings had transformed. But this Monday morning, Elena couldn't concentrate. She looked out the window, observing the city's movement, still processing the speed with which her life had changed. 6 months ago, she arrived at work at 5 in the morning, carrying cleaning supplies. Today, she had 3 assistants, a salary 20 times higher, and meetings with multinational CEOs. A soft knock on the door pulled her from her thoughts. It was Marcia, her senior executive assistant, a 28-year-old with a degree in international relations, who spoke 4 languages and had worked in consulting before joining Elena's team. Elena. 2 more proposals came in this morning, one from the German group BWMB, and another from an Italian conglomerate that wants to invest in renewable energy. Marcia placed the folders on the table. And Marcus wants to talk to you when you have a moment. He said it's important. Elena smiled, adjusting her glasses. Tell Marcus I'm free now. And Marcia, can you reschedule my 3 o'clock meeting? I want to review these proposals calmly before making any decisions. Marcia nodded and left. Elena picked up the first folder, but before opening it, she allowed herself a moment of reflection. The transformation hadn't been just professional. Her personal life was also completely different. Leo, now in his 2nd year of engineering at City University of New York, was flourishing like never before. The company's study scholarship allowed him to dedicate himself fully to his studies, and his grades were among the best. More importantly, he had regained confidence in himself and the future. Elena had moved into a spacious 3-bedroom apartment in Chelsea with a beautiful view. Leo had his own study, and Elena had set up a home office. It was a life she hadn't dreamed of having again. Her phone rang, an international call. Elena Christina Dumont answered in professional mode. Elena, c'est Jean-Claude Dubois. Comment allez-vous? The French patriarch's voice sounded cheerful. Monsieur, what a surprise. I'm very well, thank you. How can I help you? Jean-Claude continued in French. He was calling to invite her to an international conference on investments in Latin America, to be held in Paris the following month. They wanted her to be the keynote speaker, representing the Mexican market. It's a great honor, Mr. Dubois, but I need to speak with my partner before confirming. Bien sûr. But Elena, may I say one thing? In the last 6 months, you have become a reference in the European market for investments in Mexico. Your name is respected in the best business circles in Paris. When she hung up, Elena was absorbed. 6 months ago, her name was associated with scandal and disgrace. Now, apparently, it was synonymous with competence and success. Life has a peculiar way of coming full circle. Marcus knocked on the door and entered without waiting for a reply, as had become customary. The alliance had evolved into a genuine friendship based on mutual respect and absolute trust. Elena, you seem thoughtful. Any problems? Marcus dropped into the armchair in front of her desk, carrying a folder. No problems. Jean-Claude Dubois just called from Paris. He wants me to give an international conference on investments in Latin America. Elena smiled. Apparently, in recent months, I've become a reference in the European market. Marcus chuckled. Elena, you were always a reference. You just needed an opportunity to show it again. He opened the folder. And speaking of opportunities, I have a proposal that might interest you. Elena leaned forward, curious. A proposal from Global Energy Corp just came in. They are structuring a joint venture with European companies for deepwater oil exploration. It's a $15 billion project. Marcus paused to let the number sink in. And they specifically want Thorn Holdings as consultants, with you leading the negotiations. Elena felt her heart race. $15 billion would be the largest project in the company's history, and potentially one of the largest international consulting contracts ever closed in Mexico. Marcus, this is massive. Are you sure they're talking specifically about me, Elena? They said verbatim they want the former Continental Tires director, who impressed the French and is revolutionizing the Mexican international consulting market. Marcus smiled. Your reputation reached Global Energy Corp. Elena stood up and walked to the window, trying to process the magnitude of the opportunity. 6 months ago, she was cleaning executive bathrooms. Now, the largest company in the country wanted to hire her for the largest project of the decade. Marcus, accepting a project of this size means drastically expanding our operation. We'll need to hire more consultants, open offices in other cities, maybe even abroad. I know, and I'm prepared for that. Marcus stood up. Elena, when I offered you the partnership, I knew you would transform this company. But even I never imagined it would be so fast and so big. Elena turned to him. Marcus, I need to be honest. A project like this will attract international attention. My past in France, the scandal with Antoine, everything can resurface. Marcus studied her. Elena, are you afraid? Not exactly afraid, but concerned. We've built something beautiful here, a solid reputation. I don't want the past to harm what we've achieved. Marcus approached and placed a hand on her shoulder. Elena, you have faced the worst life can offer, and you came out stronger. You lost everything, and you rebuilt an even better career. If anyone tries to use your past against you, they will discover that you are no longer the same vulnerable woman from 4 years ago. Elena nodded, feeling confidence return. You're right. And besides, the truth was always on our side. I never did anything wrong. Exactly. And now you have a solid company, an impeccable reputation in Mexico, and powerful friends who support you. Marcus returned to the folder. So, what do you think? Do we accept the Global Energy Corp challenge? Elena looked once more out the window, seeing the city that had welcomed her when she had nothing, and that now offered her the greatest opportunity of her career. We accept, but with one condition. Which one? I want part of the fees from this project to be used to expand our scholarship program. If we're going to grow, I want our social responsibility to grow with us. Marcus smiled, impressed by her generosity. Done. We will allocate 40% of the net fees to scholarships. They spent the next 2 hours planning the company's expansion. They discussed the need to hire at least 10 new consultants, open an office in Houston to be closer to Global Energy Corp, and possibly establish a representation in Paris. Elena, there's one more thing, Marcus said as they were finishing. I received a call from the Daily Beacon newspaper. They want to do a cover story about you for the business and development section. From cleaner to executive, the story of the woman who is changing the Mexican international consulting market. Elena hesitated. Marcus, I don't know if I'm ready for that kind of exposure. Elena, whether you like it or not, you've become a symbol. Proof that Mexico has exceptional talents and that second chances truly exist. Marcus leaned forward. Your story can inspire thousands of people who are going through difficulties. Elena thought for a moment. For 4 years, she had hidden, ashamed of the past and afraid of the future. Perhaps it was time to fully embrace who she had become. All right, but I want the report to include information about our scholarship program. If I'm going to be a symbol, let it be a useful one." That afternoon, Elena had her first interview for a national media outlet in 4 years. The journalist was fascinated by her story. "Ms. Elena," the journalist asked at the end, "what advice would you give to people who lost everything and believe they have no future?" Elena thought carefully. "I would tell them that sometimes we need to hit rock bottom to discover our true strength. That real competence is never lost. It just lies dormant, waiting for the right opportunity. And that second chances exist. But they usually come disguised as hard work and a lot of humility." When the interview ended, Elena felt liberated. For the first time in years, she had spoken openly about her story without shame or fear. She had fully embraced her journey with all its falls and victories. At the end of the day, Elena found a photo that Leo had given her. It was the two of them on her son's high school graduation day, a few months after returning from France. Both were thin, tired, but smiling. She placed the photo next to a more recent one, taken at the celebration party when she became a partner. Leo was radiant, confident, full of plans. Their transformation was evident. Elena smiled, put away the documents, and prepared to go home. In the car, she called Leo. "Son, how was your day at the university?" "Mom, incredible. My international engineering professor commented on a Mexican executive who is gaining recognition in Europe for infrastructure projects. When he said the name Elena Dumont, I almost shouted, 'That's my mom.'" Elena laughed, her heart full of pride and happiness. "Leo, can I tell you a secret? Today, we accepted a $15 billion project with Global Energy Corp. It will be the biggest in our history." Leo was silent for a moment. "Mom, you're incredible. In 6 months, you went from cleaner to consultant for multi-million-dollar projects. That's surreal." "Leo, none of this would be possible without you. You add to me strength to continue when I wanted to give up. You reminded me every day that the future is worth fighting for." When she hung up, Elena was arriving home. The apartment in Chelsea was lit, cozy, full of the life she had rebuilt, brick by brick. Leo was in the living room studying. "Mom, how was the day for Mexico's most famous new executive?" Leo got up to hug her. "It was a day of important decisions, son. Decisions that will define our future for the next few years." They had dinner together, talking about Leo's plans, the possibility of him doing an exchange in France, the dreams that were now possible again. Later, Elena sat on the terrace looking at the city lights. She thought about Antoine, still in prison in France, and realized that she no longer felt anger or resentment. She felt indifference and gratitude for having found the strength to start over. She thought about all the cleaning employees and the scholarship program that was changing lives. She thought about Marcus, who had bet on her when she didn't even believe in herself. And she thought about the future that stretched out, full of possibilities that 6 months ago seemed impossible. Elena Christina Dumont was no longer the destroyed woman who had returned from France 4 years earlier. She was not the invisible cleaner. She was a respected executive, a successful partner, a proud mother, and a woman who had proven that life always offers a second chance to those who have the courage to take it. Remember to subscribe for more stories that will empower and inspire you. 1 year after the meeting that changed everything forever, Elena stood on the main stage of the convention center in New York City, in front of an audience of 1,000 entrepreneurs and investors. It was the National Congress of International Business, and she had been invited as a keynote speaker to talk about professional reconstruction and excellence in international consulting. But today was not just another conference. It was the day she would receive the Executive of the Year award, granted by the American Association of Executives, for the exceptional work she had developed at Thorne Holdings and its impact on the Mexican market. Elena adjusted the microphone and looked at the audience. In the front row, Leo smiled proudly. Beside him, Marcus, who had become much more than a partner. Sarah, David, and Emily were also there, representing the team that had grown from 15 to 120 employees in the last year. Exactly 18 months ago, her voice was firm, I was working as a cleaner in a corporate building in downtown New York City. I arrived at 5 a.m., cleaned offices, emptied trash, and tried to be invisible. Not because I was ashamed of the work, but because I was ashamed of who I believed I had become. A murmur went through the audience. Today, exactly 18 months later, our company has closed international contracts worth $302 billion. We created 50 direct jobs, established alliances with 15 countries, and our scholarship program has already benefited over 800 families. The audience erupted in applause, but Elena raised her hand for silence. But I'm not here to talk about numbers. I'm here to talk about something much more important, about second chances, about the dignity of work, and about how Mexico wastes talent every day, simply because we don't know how to look beyond appearances. Elena paused, letting the words sink in. For 4 years, I was just a statistic, an immigrant who returned to her country without resources, a middle-aged woman competing for jobs with much younger people, a highly qualified professional that the market had discarded due to association with a scandal. Her voice became more intense. How many of you have cleaning, security, or maintenance employees who might be former teachers, former engineers, former administrators, whom life forced to accept any available job? The silence in the auditorium was absolute. Elena saw people looking at each other, reflecting. I was lucky, very lucky. I was in the right place, at the right time, when a crisis forced my boss to discover who I really was. Elena looked directly at Marcus. But how many exceptional talents are hidden in our own offices, just waiting for an opportunity to show their worth? Elena told her complete story. Her career in France, the scandal that wasn't her fault, her return to Mexico, the years of cleaning, and finally, the opportunity that changed everything. She spoke about fear, shame, the feeling of uselessness, but also about resilience, hope, and the importance of never giving up completely. The most important lesson I learned, Elena said at the end of the conference, is that real competence is never lost. It can be dormant, hidden, underutilized, but it's always there, waiting for the opportunity to re-emerge. And sometimes, to find that opportunity, we need to accept starting from scratch, working hard, and maintaining our dignity intact, no matter what we're doing. The audience rose for a 5-minute standing ovation. Elena saw tears in the eyes of many people, emotional executives, young professionals taking notes. After the conference, during the award ceremony, Elena went back on stage to receive the Executive of the Year trophy. The president of the American Association of Executives read a quote that made her blush. Elena Cristina Dumont represents the best of Mexican entrepreneurship, exceptional technical competence, international strategic vision, genuine social responsibility, and an extraordinary ability to transform adversity into opportunity. In 18 months, she not only rebuilt her own career, but revolutionized the Mexican international consulting market and inspired thousands of professionals across the country. When Elena held the trophy, heavy and elegant, she felt she held much more than professional recognition. She held the physical proof that life truly offers second chances to those who have the courage to take them. After the ceremony, at the cocktail reception, Elena was approached by dozens of people, executives seeking alliances, young professionals asking for advice, journalists wanting interviews. But the conversations that touched her most were with employees from various sectors who came to tell their own stories of new beginnings. Ms. Elena, a 50-year-old woman, said, "I'm an HR manager at a multinational. After hearing your conference, I'm going to review our hiring processes. How many talents are we perhaps losing due to prejudice?" A young executive approached. "Elena, my father is a building porter, but he has an accounting background. For 10 years, he hasn't been able to find a job in his field. Your story made me realize that maybe I can help him in a different way." It was exactly the impact Elena hoped to make. Later that night, Elena, Leo, and Marcus dined together at an elegant restaurant to celebrate. The conversation flowed between future plans, memories of the past few months, and reflections on how everything had changed. "Mom," Leo said during dessert, "today I realized something. You not only rebuilt your career, you became an even better person than you were before everything fell apart." Elena looked at her son, surprised. "Why do you think that?" "Because before in France you were competent and successful, but perhaps a little distant from the reality of those who struggle to survive. Now you are competent, successful, and completely connected with the difficulties of ordinary people." Leo paused. "You use your success to help others. That's much more powerful." Marcus nodded. "Leo is right. Elena, you became not only an exceptional executive, but a leader who truly understands social responsibility." Elena felt her eyes fill with tears of gratitude. "You two are the reason I managed to get here. Leo, you gave me purpose in the most difficult moments. Marcus, you gave me the opportunity when no one else would." "And you," Marcus responded, "transformed that opportunity into something much bigger than I ever imagined possible." 2 months later, Elena was in Paris, at the Dubois et Associés office, signing a contract to establish a permanent joint venture between the two companies. Thorn Holdings would open an office in Paris, and Dubois would establish permanent operations in Mexico. Jean-Claude Dubois, now 71, observed the signing with evident satisfaction. "Elena, when we met you 2 years ago, we knew we were in the presence of someone special, but we never imagined you would become one of Latin America's most respected executives." Philippe Dubois added, "Elena, in 2 years you have proven that Mexico has some of the best business talents in the world. We are eager to expand our investments in the country." When Elena left the Dubois office, she walked through the streets of Paris, where she had lived for 12 years. It was strange to be back, but not as the broken refugee who had left 4 years earlier. She was returning as a respected executive, closing international deals, representing Mexico at the highest corporate levels. She passed by the building where she used to live with Antoine, now occupied by other people. She felt a pang of nostalgia, but not sadness. It was nostalgia for the young and ambitious person she had been, but also gratitude for the wiser and stronger woman she had become. That night, in her hotel, Elena received an unexpected call. It was Antoine calling from prison. "Elena, I saw the news about you. I'm impressed with what you achieved." Elena took a deep breath. "Antoine, what do you want?" "I want to apologize for everything, for destroying our life, for putting you and Leo in an impossible situation." His voice sounded remorseful. "And I want you to know that I'm proud of how you rebuilt everything." Elena was silent for a moment. For 4 years, she had waited for that apology. Now that it came, she realized she no longer needed it. "Antoine, I accept your apologies, but our life together ended a long time ago. I hope you find your own path when you get out of prison." "Elena, can I ask one thing? Are you happy now?" Elena looked out the hotel window, watching the lights of Paris twinkle in the night. "I'm happier than I've ever been, Antoine. I discovered that I am much stronger than I imagined." When she hung up, Elena felt completely liberated from the past. Antoine was just a memory now, a lesson learned, a chapter closed. On the flight back to Mexico, Elena reviewed the new contract documents and planned the next steps for international expansion. Thorne Holdings was becoming one of Latin America's leading consulting firms, with offices in Mexico, France, and plans to open operations in Colombia and Argentina. But more important than business growth, Elena knew she had found her true purpose, using her success to create opportunities for others, breaking prejudices about professional value, and proving that second chances really do exist. When the plane landed in Mexico City, Leo was waiting for her at the airport with a bouquet of flowers and a smile that lit up the entire terminal. "Mom, welcome back to your true home." Elena hugged her son, feeling that she had finally found not only professional success, but inner peace. She had gone from an invisible cleaner to a respected international executive, but more importantly, she had become a living example that life always offers a second chance to those who have the courage to take it. Elena Cristina Dumont was no longer the woman who had lost everything in France. She was the woman who had rebuilt everything in Mexico and who was now ready to conquer the world again. But this time on her own terms, with her own strength, and with the wisdom that only comes from someone who has hit rock bottom and found the strength to rise. The journey back to the top was complete, and the future, for the first time in years, seemed infinitely promising. This story of Elena Cristina Dumont shows us that true value isn't defined by a job title or a painful past, but by the courage to rise, the resilience to rebuild, and the willingness to help others along the way. It reminds us that opportunities can appear in the most unexpected forms, and sometimes the biggest breakthroughs come when we're forced to confront our deepest fears and reveal our authentic selves. What part of Elena's journey resonated most with you? Let us know in the comments below.